They thought the old man was just dozing, in first-class head tilted toward the window, where dawn burned across the wing. A young consultant scoffed, saying he must have wandered up from coach, the kind of quiet insult people hide behind a grin. Then the cabin speaker stuttered static, folding into a clear voice, Echo 7. Actual welcome home. Every sound in the plane froze even the coffee pour. Quietly, he opened his eyes, the silver pin on his jacket, catching the light like a small flag in flight. Quiet men leave echoes too. The evening sun poured through the airport windows, painting the jet bridge in honey gold. First class was half lit, half quiet, just the hum of recycled air and the faint chime of boarding music. Sir, you'll need to wake up for departure. Lena Carver bent slightly polite but firm. Seat 2A didn't move. The man looked carved from the light itself, silver hair, weathered hands folded over a leather carry-on. Across the aisle, a younger voice cut in. Guess the boomers cash in miles for naps now. Laughter short and careless. Lena shot him a look. He's fine, sir. We'll be pushing back soon. Blake Harris, all 30 years and restless ambition, raised both hands. Just saying he's out cold before we even taxi. Frank Bennett wasn't out cold. Behind closed lids, his hearing aid caught the low thrum of engines powering up. Beneath that, another rhythm, an intermittent hiss. Not air pressure. Static. Then the seatbelt light blinked. Lena leaned closer to fasten his buckle. Something flashed under the reading lamp, a small pin round, dulled by decades, the wings barely visible. She paused. Nice pin, she murmured. He opened one eye. Old habit. The words came slow gravel, smoothed by years. Blake smirked. Habit of sleeping through takeoff. Lena sighed. Sir, tray table, please. Sure thing. Blake clacked it shut, still watching. The man didn't rise to the bait. He simply rested a palm on the armrest, the skin pale against the dark leather, steady as a gauge needle. For a beat, nobody spoke. The hum of the cabin deepened. Outside, Denver's sky folded into bronze. Then the sound again. A crackle through the intercom, soft, almost a whisper. Lena frowned toward the cockpit. Captain, we're still connected to Gatecom. The PA clicked silent. Static gone. Blake chuckled. Ghosts in the wiring. But Frank's hand tightened. He wasn't hearing ghosts. He was hearing a frequency he'd helped design, one decommissioned before most of these passengers were born. 3 tones paused, 2 short bursts. He lifted his head eyes, pale blue and unblinking. Every instinct told him to ignore it. Still, memory stirred like dust under a rotor wash. The attendant noticed the change. You okay, sir? He nodded once. Fine. Just thought I heard something. Blake muttered, yeah. The sound of retirement. Lena ignored him. She moved down the aisle, professionalism wrapped around her like armor. Frank exhaled slow and measured. He wasn't angry, only aware that the past had reached across the static to tap his shoulder. Outside the window, the sun sank below the runway's edge. The engines rumbled a living heartbeat through aluminum ribs. At 30,000 feet, night unfurled outside the windows like dark velvet. The cabin had settled into that hush between conversation and sleep, a rhythm of soft breathing and coffee spoons. Then the music feed on the PA glitched, a metallic hiss cutting through Frank's dreamless half-focus. 3 tones. Pause. 2 bursts. Lena looked up from pouring water for a passenger. Captain, we still linked to the gate, she asked through the interphone. Donovan's voice came back steady. No, all lines clear. Why? Because something just talked over the music. The captain chuckled softly. Probably a weather crossfeed. These jets carry ghosts in the wiring. She forced a smile and ended the call, but her eyes drifted to 2A. Frank was awake now, his hand light on the armrest. He did not look confused. He looked like a man measuring distance with his breathing. "What did you hear?" he asked quietly, when she passed. Lena hesitated. It sounded like a name or a word. Which one? Echo, something Echo 7 actual. Does that mean anything? Frank's gaze moved to the window where his reflection floated over clouds. For a heartbeat, he saw another night rotor wash red light rain. He blinked it away. Maybe old air traffic chatter, he said. His tone was flat, but the knuckles whitened on his thumb. Blake leaned across the aisle. "You people hear ghosts again, Echo 7 like a movie code word." A few passengers looked up. Someone whispered, "That's military, right?" Could be another murmured or some podcast thing. Lena gave Blake a warning glance. "Sir, please keep your voice down." He shrugged, but there was nervous energy beneath the grin. "You all act like we just heard God on the radio." Frank didn't reply. He was tracing something with his fingers along his jacket cuff, a faint oval patch of threadbare fabric, a shape that once held a badge. Now only the outline remained like a ghost pressed into cloth. Lena saw it. "Was something there long time ago," he said. "Doesn't matter now." Still, she caught the way his voice thinned on the edges. Memory had its own pressure altitude. The lights dimmed for cruise. A hush fell. Engines roared softly below their feet like steady breathing. Blake leaned back, muttering, "Next thing you know, the old guy's calling in airstrikes." Lena ignored him, but a few passengers snickered. The moment hung uneasy. Frank closed his eyes. Static lived behind them. The tone sequence played again in memory, every note sharp and precise. Discipline never dies, it just waits to be recalled. Captain Donovan had seen 1,000 night skies, but none that hummed like this one. The PA had gone silent, yet he still felt the vibration in his teeth, a ghost frequency threading through the airframe. He toggled the headset. "Denver Tower, this is Flight 743 requesting radio check." The line crackled, cleared, and a woman's voice answered. "Copy 743. You're clean on both channels. Tower, we may have cross-feed interference. Something calling itself Echo 7 actual. A pause. Too long for routine. Say again." "Captain." "You heard me. Echo 7 actual. Origin unknown." Static filled the space between words like held breath. Then the controller's tone shifted cool to formal. "Standby 1. Switching bandwidth." Down the aisle, Lena set a cup of tea on the counter and tried not to look at 2A. Frank was awake, eyes open, gaze fixed on the wingtip lights. "Everything okay up front?" she asked quietly. Donovan lowered his voice. "They're running something through a secure channel. Said they need a name confirmed. Whose name didn't say yet." A low rumble of turbulence rolled through the cabin. Someone gasped. Lena steadied herself with a hand on the galley wall. From 2A came a dry humor line that cracked the tension. "Guess even retired pilots hate turbulence." Blake snorted. "Huh!" "Finally awake, Captain Knapp." Lena shot him a look sharp enough to cut. "Maybe show some respect. He's flown longer than we've been alive." Frank smiled thinly. No harm done. But his hand tightened on the seat arm, a motion so controlled it looked rehearsed. Silent beat, the air through the vents shifted pitch, a steady rotor wash of memory. In the tower controller, Mendez typed the name into a gray-green terminal, Frank Bennett. Enter. The screen blinked. Access restricted. Another line appeared beneath legacy file flagged Titan Flight Ops 1979. Mendez froze. He had never heard of Titan Flight Ops. He called across the room. "Supervisor, you need to see this." A man in a rumpled shirt strode over, coffee in hand. "What is it? Echo 7 Actual. They're airborne on civilian manifest. Passenger name matches a flagged legacy file." The supervisor's eyebrows rose. He leaned closer to the screen. "Who authorized a civilian flight with that identifier?" "No one, sir. Files classified beyond our level. Patch me through." The radio light pulsed amber. His voice dropped to a whisper meant for another era. "Flight 743, confirm the name of the individual reporting Echo 7 Actual." Donovan answered without hesitation. "Frank Bennett, retired crew chief, 63. The line stayed open, only breathing. Then a different voice entered, older, measured. "Understood. Maintain course. We'll handle groundside. Do not disturb him." The channel clicked dead. Mendez stared at his supervisor. "What was that?" The man rubbed his jaw. "A name from the black side of history. Just log it and forget it." "But that's an order." Back on board, Lena hovered near Frank's row. She sensed it, something unspoken pulling tighter than turbulence. "Mr. Bennett," she said softly, "the captain will land soon. We just had some radio trouble." He nodded. "Trouble's usually someone trying to talk when they shouldn't." "You mean the signal?" He looked at her, then the faintest smile. "I mean the past." The captain's door eased open on a whisper of hydraulics. Sunlight streamed through the cockpit glass, striking a thin halo across his shoulders. Captain Donovan carried the kind of quiet you only learned after decades in the air. He looked down the aisle, then spoke through the intercom voice, low and measured. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've received a message from Air Command." A few passengers stirred, curious. Donovan's eyes met Lena's. "They've asked us to confirm a passenger, Frank Bennett, seat 2A. Heads turned. The old man lifted his gaze but didn't move. Sir Donovan said softly. Command transmitted the following. "Confirm Frank Bennett, Titan Ops, Honor Protocol 7. He paused, letting the words breathe. Then still on the open mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a distinguished veteran on board tonight." Blake's smirk dissolved before the sentence ended. He sat straighter, as if the air itself had thickened. Lena's hand went instinctively to her heart. She didn't salute, passengers wouldn't understand, but the motion was there all the same, small and certain. Frank's eyes lowered to the pin glinting on his lapel. The tiny emblem caught the sun, the metal alive again for the first time in years. Then the cabin speakers hissed. Static 3 tones paused, 2 bursts. Every head turned. The signal came through, crisp, unmistakable. A voice official and calm rolled over the airwaves. "Echo 7 Actual, welcome home." The words hung there, vibrating against aluminum and heartbeat. The cabin froze in reverent silence. Lena blinked back, sudden tears. Blake's throat worked, but no sound came. Across the aisle, a businessman slowly set down his phone. The captain kept his head bowed. "Sir," he said quietly, "the tower sends its regards." Frank nodded once, a gesture almost imperceptible but complete. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Every note of the transmission was a handshake from ghosts who still kept watch. Silent beat. Outside, clouds thinned, revealing a streak of light like a runway carved into the sky. Eye rest marker. But then the sky went quiet. Blake whispered, Was that real? Lena looked at him, her voice steady. Respect doesn't always wait for permission. He gave a single nod, shame reddening his ears. A child in row 3 asked his mother, "Who's Echo 7? The mother whispered, "Someone brave." Captain Donovan turned off the PA. In the cockpit, both pilots sat wordless. The radio light blinked once, then dimmed. "Protocol 7, the co-pilot said quietly. "Never heard of it." Donovan kept his gaze forward. "It's the one they use when the war ends for only one man." He exhaled long and slow. Discipline in every breath. Down the aisle, Lena straightened the service curtain. She caught Frank's reflection in the window, calm hands folded. The sunset poured over his shoulders like a medal no one had to pin. She whispered more to herself than to anyone. "Welcome home, sir." The aircraft began its slow glide down through the amber sheet of cloud, the cabin lights softening to match the sky. You could feel the shift, the kind that came after a hymn when no one wanted to be the first to breathe too loud. Lena walked the aisle, her hands steady but her throat tight. A few passengers reached out as she passed a nod, a quiet thank you, though she hadn't done anything but pour water and keep her voice calm. Still, the gratitude flowed through her like current. Seat 2A sat still, bathed in sunset. Frank Bennett looked out toward nothing in particular. The pin on his lapel caught the light again, and the tiny wings gleamed like they had been polished by the moment itself. "Coffee, sir?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. "After tonight, might need something stronger." She laughed, the tension cracking. "Cabin regulation forbids that, Mr. Bennett. Then I'll settle for gratitude. Cheaper, too." When she turned back to collect a cup from the tray table, there was a folded napkin waiting. A few lines in hurried handwriting. "Tell him thank you for reminding me what real service means." No name, just Blake's seat number scribbled at the corner. The handwriting leaned awkwardly, like it had been written fast to outrun shame. She tucked it into her pocket and felt something inside unclench. Across the aisle, Blake stared at the window. He caught her glance and mouthed, "Sorry." She nodded once, the gesture enough. Silent beat, the engine's hum faded to a pulse, steady slow, like a shared heartbeat keeping altitude. A soft announcement rolled through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our final descent into Raleigh. Weather clear, temperature mild." Someone started clapping. It wasn't loud, just one person, then another, until the sound rippled forward like a tide meeting shore. No cheering, only the sound of hands meeting in respect. The old man didn't move. He simply turned his head toward them, the corners of his eyes creasing, as if each sound were another memory landing safely. Lena leaned closer. "They're clapping for you, you know." He shook his head. "They're clapping for all of us. I just happened to be on board." A teenager from row 5 approached shyly, a paper coffee coupon in hand. "Sir, you dropped this." Frank took it, smiling. "I didn't, but thank you anyway." The kid grinned, confused but proud of himself, and retreated to his seat. Then a woman offered a handshake. A man slipped him an old challenge coin. Another just whispered, "My father was Air Force too." Each gesture, small, ordinary, beautiful, gratitude in motion. Lena returned the napkin note to him quietly. "From seat 3B. Frank read it, folded it once, and placed it under the pin on his lapel. "Guess I was just keeping a seat warm for the next guy." She smiled. "You still make it look easy." "Nothing easy about staying quiet this long," he said, humor light. He glanced at the aisle ahead. "Next time I'll book economy, less attention there." Lena chuckled. "You'd still find a way to upgrade the tone." He tilted his head, listening to the engines. That's just muscle memory. SM lock evidence engines equals symbolic pulse of service, not combat. As they passed through the final layer of cloud, the sunlight broke clean and direct, striking the window, with such clarity that for a moment it looked like another world opening beneath them. Morning bled softly through the glass walls of the terminal, the light slow and forgiving. The red-eye had landed on time, but no one rushed the aisle. It was the kind of silence that happens when people know they've witnessed something they can't quite explain. Lena stood near the door, her uniform jacket neat again, though her eyes told another story. Passengers shuffled past, quiet, offering nods toward seat 2A. Frank Bennett rose last, careful with his movements, the stiffness of old service never fully gone. The PA crackled one last ghost of static. Echo 7. Actual mission complete. Heads turned. The words were calm, recorded, almost ceremonial. Someone clapped once, then stopped, realizing it wasn't a moment for applause, but for stillness. Frank smiled, small and sure. They always did have good timing, he murmured. Lena fell in beside him as they walked up the jet bridge. They played that from the tower. He nodded. Guess they wanted to close the loop. The doors opened onto gate C12. Morning commuters waited for their flights, unaware that the man walking past them had just received an honor decades overdue. Against the far wall stood the honor board filled with pins and patches left by veterans over the years, tokens of service, little pieces of stories once airborne. Frank reached into his pocket and removed his pin. The metal was warm from his hand. He turned it once under the light. Wasn't meant to be shiny, he said. Lena watched. You sure you want to leave it? He nodded. Things like this belong to the next crew now. He pinned it to the board beside a faded marine patch. The click was barely audible, but it sounded like something finding its rightful place. Silent beat, a breath of air drifted through the corridor vents, soft as rotor wash, then gone. She lingered a step behind. Do you ever sleep easy now? Frank adjusted the strap of his bag, eyes on the sunlight spilling across the floor. You never really sleep when duty calls. The words were gentle, but they landed like a closing ceremony, echoing the title, completing the circle. Lena smiled, blinking away the weight behind her eyes. Then rest a little anyway. You've earned at least that much. He tipped his head in thanks. Ma'am, rest is just another kind of standby. They both laughed quietly, the sound thin but human. Humor light. Standby sounds more professional than nap, she said. He grinned. Pilots always prefer better terminology. Outside the concourse came alive the scent of coffee, the squeak of luggage wheels, a boarding call for another flight. He moved toward the exit, the crowd parting naturally, as if the air itself made space. Lena looked back once at the honor board. The pin caught the light again, brighter this time, reflecting a thin flare across the glass, Microcliff number 185S. In that reflection for half a second, she thought she saw the sky instead of the terminal ceiling. Frank reached the threshold, where daylight met the floor. He paused, turned slightly, and gave her a nod, the kind used between those who've shared silence more meaningful than speech. Then he walked into the light, steady, unhurried, the quiet rhythm of his steps fading, like a heartbeat on the radio, silent beat. Shorts, moment number 3. The sound of static returned soft, deliberate, then dissolved into morning air. The concourse was waking now, coffee machines humming, and sunlight spilling through glass, like a hymn for ordinary mornings. Still near the honor board, one badge caught the light. A tiny flare that whispered of every name it stood beside. Then the loudspeaker sighed once more, that familiar crackle, becoming almost music, Echo 7. Actual mission complete. Lena smiled hand to heart while Frank walked toward the doors, his step calm, steady, unhurried, the kind of quiet that taught others how to listen. And somewhere in that hush, the badge gleamed again, proof that kindness can serve without applause, and that you never really sleep when duty calls.